Okay, we are going to get started. So thank you to everyone for joining us today for the launch of SAI's FairCapacity platform. On behalf of all of the speakers that join me today, we just want to really extend our warm welcome to you. My name is Stephanie Wilson, and I'm an Associate Director at Social Accountability International. For those of you not familiar with SAI, we are a global non-governmental organization advancing human rights at workplaces around the world. SAI has a vision of decent work everywhere, sustained by an understanding that socially responsible workplaces benefit business while also securing fundamental human rights. And I'm going to be moderating today's event along with my colleague, Alim. And before we get started, I just want to quickly review some operational items and briefly go over our agenda for today. So today's event will be recorded. And as a note, all views expressed in today's conversation do not necessarily reflect the views of the organizations that each speaker is representing. So they represent their personal perspective. And at any time in the event today, you may place questions that you have in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. You won't be able to use the chat function, so we highly recommend you use the question and answer box. And then these will be answered during the dedicated Q&A session. Today's webinar is going to be broken into 4 sections. First, we're very fortunate to have 3 esteemed guests provide short keynote speeches to kick off the event. Second, we're going to be joined by 7 highly respected panelists to discuss key issues facing Bangladesh's apparel industry. And these issues include transparency in the supply chain, production planning, capacity utilization, purchasing practices, and the impact of COVID-19 on the industry, as well as building back better through technology. Third, SAI's technology partner Vertru is going to provide a live demo of the FairCapacity platform. And following this, we're going to open it up to your questions before we close out the event with some closing remarks. So before we introduce our keynote speakers, I want to provide some background to this event and to the platform that we are launching today. So over 2 years ago, and with funding from the European Commission, the Global Fund to End Modern Slavery, the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, SAI set out to create a digital FairCapacity platform where suppliers can showcase their business capabilities, more accurately calculate their production capacity, and to enable buyers to book capacity without overextending a factory. So similar to hotels.com or a booking.com concept. So we started this project at SAI because we identified a need for solutions that take a business approach to improving working conditions in the apparel supply chain. As a mission-driven organization, here at SAI, ultimately our goal is to reduce or eliminate labor violations like excessive overtime and unauthorized subcontracting, both of which can contribute to the rise of more serious violations like forced labor. As we began to explore the root cause of these issues, we saw that there are many systemic challenges that feed into them. And we also found that many labor and safety issues are related to inefficiencies on the business side of things. So in many cases, we found manufacturers take on many more orders than they can handle due to business pressures, which puts them at an increased risk of needing to rely on things like excessive overtime and unauthorized subcontracting. And this puts them at even greater risk of things like forced labor and health and safety issues, employee burnout, absenteeism, and lower productivity. Inaccurate production capacity calculations have also exacerbated this issue. So our research has shown that in many facilities, production capacity is measured using only a small number of the relevant metrics and we found that suppliers often rely on assumptions rather than data. Common capacity disruptions like worker absenteeism or supply delays and production bottlenecks are often left out of the equation, resulting in inaccurate production capacity measurements and then unrealistic production targets. Buyers too have their own price, time, and volume pressures. And when all of these things are added to the equation, factories cannot absorb those pressures and they end up being pushed down to the workers themselves. So as I said, the inspiration for the FairCapacity platform comes from innovations like hotels.com and other platforms that have transformed how businesses optimize their capacity and attract more customers. The platform seeks to address labor issues through more accurate production capacity measurement and planning capabilities, pathways for responsible subcontracting, and better channels for buyer and supplier communication. And you will all see that during the live demo that we have later on in this webinar. So that is a little bit of background as to why we are meeting today, and we really do look forward to sharing the demo with you. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Alim, who is going to introduce our keynote speakers. Over to you, Alim.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. This is Abdul Alim. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Sustainable Management System Bangladesh and lead trainer for SAI in Bangladesh. I'm also the local project director for the project we are discussing today. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Hans Lembridge and invite him to speak. Dr. Hans Lembridge is currently the team leader for education, human development, and public finance management at the EU delegation to Bangladesh. He worked as a researcher on entrepreneurship in Belgium before joining the European Commission in 2016. The EU has provided generous funding for this platform and program to help increase supplier productivity and encourage cooperation between buyers and suppliers, hereby enabling improved productivity and social compliance and benefit to both workers and businesses. Hans, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Abdul. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, everyone, because I understand you joined from different locations tonight. First of all, I want to say that I'm very pleased to be invited to this panel discussion and live demonstration of the FairCapacity platform, marking the official launch of the platform and production capacity calculator in Bangladesh, hosted by our implementing partner, Social Accountability International, within the framework of the EU co-funded project. And I give you the full name for one time, towards mutual buyer-supplier collaboration, supplier capacity, and better buying platforms, of which I think we will see an example today. Promoting sustainable consumption and production patterns and decent work are key strategic sustainable development goals, in particularly SDG 8 and 9, and they're also part of the new European Consensus of Development, which is basically framing the type of assistance that Europe is giving worldwide. The rise of global value change and their complexity came with increased political and public awareness and expectations in the European Union and abroad on how to ensure their sustainable management while safeguarding that economic growth and development go hand in hand with social justice, respect for human rights, including core labor standards and environmental protection. Focusing on the garment value chain in Bangladesh, which employs approximately 4 million people and makes up the majority of the country's overall exports, more than 80%. Transparency and traceability is particularly important due to the fragmented production of the sector and the widespread practice of subcontracting. The platform is relevant to the needs of buyers and suppliers as it intends to introduce a systemic change in global supply chain relationships through establishing stable buyer-supplier relationships, building mutual buyer-supplier responsibility and trust, and contributing to the regulatory protections for workers. The linking of buyers and suppliers through the platform, allowing the buyers to view available production capacity and reserve it, calculating production capacity more accurately, and revealing the impact of sourcing practices on labor performance adds to the visibility and control in the supply chain. To emphasize the European Union and its member states' commitment to advance the Decent Work agenda, a so-called Team Europe initiative of decent work was launched in Bangladesh in June 2021. And I think in the course of this year, you will hear many more about this. So stay tuned for updates on that part. In the context of this initiative, the European Union and its member states are jointly working to share expertise, provide financial and technical support, and facilitate the exchange of good practices to improve the enabling environment for jobs and labor rights on one hand, and skills and employment on the other hand. I wish you a lot of success with the webinar today. Donobat. Over to the moderator again, Mr. Abdul.
Thanks, Hans. We will now go to Mr. Abdul Muttalib from GSCS International Ltd. Mr. Abdul Muttalib established GSCS in 2010. He is a highly experienced professional working in the field of sustainability, social fairness, and material health of product for more than 17 years. He has worked tirelessly to grow GSCS from 2010 to now. He has cemented its existence as a champion of sustainability. GSCS is currently working with more than 1,500 operators and organizations over the world on sustainability solutions to ensure a habitable world and brighter future. Mr. Muttalib. Mr. Muttalib, I'd like to request for your pitch.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say something in this mega event. And I would like to thank SAI for considering GSS as their project collaborating partner. I feel very much proud to be part of this project, and GSS also be proud to be part of this project. And this project, what are the feelings towards this project is like being the third, sometimes it is the second largest country for leading the manufacturing and exporter of ready-made garments. Garments factory often get some burned out by the unrealistic production limit and the deadline. So the unrealistic and the production capacity calculation often leads to excessive overtime, unsafe accommodation, contractual worker, and unauthorized subcontracting, and so more. As well, the worker health issue, dissatisfaction, and harass behavior also comes as obvious of the product. SAI, in collaboration with GSS, is the local collaborator, initiate to develop the capacity calculator that will help quantify the impacts of the purchasing practice on supplier production capacity, improve supplier production capacity calculation, also improve the labor performance. Rather than accumulating the generic data like the number of machines and the employee, these tools also will help incorporate the indicator like the worker productivity, skill level, shift optimization, purchasing capacity like the unpredictable volume, last minute of the order changing, design change, long payment period, and so more. Based on this indicator, will help and create an algorithm, a capacity calculator for calculating the predicting capacity with much greater accuracy and the transparency. Transparent capacity calculation will ultimately build a transparent and strong business relationship with the stakeholder. This project will involve multiple layers of the stakeholders involvement, like the supplier involvement, brand involvement, factory involvement, stakeholder engagement, and other involvement also be a part of this calculator activities. If we go in the summarized version, then the question may come, why this calculator and how it's work? And if we answer the question why this calculator is required, then we can predict, and also it is the practical aspect that unrealistic production capacity always lead the excessive overtime, unsafe accommodation of the contractual worker, unauthorized subcontracting to under-regulated factory, and more. The SAI capacity calculator also helps to calculate impact of purchasing practice on the supplier production capacity, improve supplier production capacity calculation, and improve labor performance as well. What the indicator are used in this calculator? I'm just like to be put some area what the indicator are used in this calculator. Say for example, the indicator will help to worker productivity, skill level, shift optimization, purchasing practice, and the unpredictable volume, sometimes the last minute sense of the order and the designing, long payment period, etc. And if we go in the last way, then we can just quote some point like the unrealistic and poor production capacity calculation often leads to the excessive unsafe accommodation of the contractual worker, unauthorized subcontracting to under-regulated factory, which are the key area where the unhappiness comes from the worker side. As well as also the factory owner are losing their lot of money due to the wrong calculation of their productivity and the capacity. And as well as the transparent of the capacity calculation, of course, will ultimately build a transparent and strong business relation with the brand and other stakeholder. So I think this calculator will be the milestone for ready-made garments industries to set up their all the things in the transparent way to present everywhere. And the other speakers and this session will also help to give you the idea how the manufacturer can be benefited from this calculator. And that's all from my side. And thank you very much again, Alim Bhai and the SAI to giving the opportunity to tell something on this very mega type and new concept of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muttalib. for your valuable information. To conclude our opening remarks, we will now turn it over to Jane Wong from Social Accountability International. Jane serves as President and Chief Executive Officer of SAI, working with the Board of Directors, Advisory Board, and staff. She oversees the organization's strategy, management, and stakeholder engagement. Jane has helped lead the development of the FairCapacity platform right from the beginning. Jane, please go ahead.
Thank you, Lem. Hello, everyone. How wonderful to see such an enormous turnout. While I wish that we could be all together in person, this webinar speaks to our collective resilience. The last decade before the pandemic saw the Bangladesh apparel industry play such a crucial role in advancing the world's economic growth. In global growth and trade, we saw huge progress all around the world in reducing extreme poverty and child labor. While this was disrupted by the pandemic, now we are poised for recovery, perhaps with even more business than before, showing what we're all capable of together. Yet, we've also seen the importance of finding new paradigms for the future with more inclusive, sustainable growth. We live in an age of technology that can enable us to connect all around the world, and that's enabling self-driving cars. Surely we as humans are smart enough to use that technology and to build better economies and better societies. And that's what today's event is all about. How do we foster entrepreneurialism, innovation, growth, while advancing the benefits for industry, for workers, and all stakeholders? And that's through collaboration and through smart, stakeholder-driven technology. Thank you to all of you for joining, to our team, to our esteemed panelists, our partners Vertru, Sustainable Management Systems, GSCS International, and our funders, the Global Fund to End Modern Slavery, NORAD, UK FCDO, and our funder that was there with us from the very beginning, believing us in this project from the very beginning, the European Commission. Thanks to everyone, and now back to you, Lim.
Thank you, Jane. And thank to all our opening speakers for their thoughtful remarks. We say goodbye to Hans. Thank you for joining us today and for supporting this work. We'll now transition into our discussion. I'd like to request Stephanie to talk about the main topics of today's discussion.
Great, thank you, Alim. So as Alim mentioned, we're going to go into a facilitated discussion today. We have brought together a great combination of panelists to talk about some of the key issues for really why we decided to create the FairCapacity program in the first place. And so our panelists are going to be discussing some of the following topics. So transparency in the apparel supply chain and the importance of it, and the importance of good production planning, but also, the risks of poor production planning, the importance of capacity utilization and how to go about ensuring, factories are working at optimal capacity, purchasing practices, and the impact of purchasing practices on suppliers, especially during COVID-19. And then more generally, just what has been the impact of COVID on the Bangladesh apparel industry. So really our goal with the discussion is to talk about these issues that are faced by Bangladesh's apparel sector in an effort to explain why SAI developed the production capacity calculator and the FairCapacity platform. because through it, we're trying to solve problems. And this is going to be a bit of a discussion about what some of those problems or risks or challenges are. So we are joined by 7 esteemed panelists who you'll be able to see here on the screen, as well as Alim. Thank you, Alim, for moderating the discussion today. And I'm handing it back over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I would like to introduce the speakers of the discussion today. So we have 7 distinguished speakers in this discussion. Dr. Khandakar Ghulam Muazzam is an industrial and labor economist and serves as the research director of the Center for Policy Dialogue, CPD. CPD, an influential policy and research institute in Bangladesh, specializing in regional and global economic integration. CPD's work includes research on both the workers of and the overall R&D industry in Bangladesh. He has been with the CPD for almost 20 years and has many years of experience in economic research and policy making in Bangladesh. Mr. Abdullahil Raqib holds the position of Managing Director of Team Group, one of the fastest growing government manufacturing group of companies in Bangladesh. He is the director at Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association, BGMEA, the leading garment trade body for the 3rd time now. He is on the trustees, one of the trustees of the board of BGMEA University of Fashion and Technology. Tiffany Rogers has worked in fashion and labor for over 15 years, is currently the senior manager of social compliance at the Fair Labor Association, a leading organization dedicated to protecting workers' rights around the world. The FLA counts some of the world's leading brands like Adidas and Patagonia among its affiliates. At the FLA, she manages the FLA's award-winning fair compensation program that supports members to improve wages for garment workers. Tiffany's expertise incorporates labor rights, living wage, and responsible purchasing and production practices to innovate standards and tools to improve corporate practices and factory conditions. Mr. Nasir Chowdhury serves the Global Fund to End Modern Slavery, GFEMS, as the country manager in Bangladesh, where he monitors, reports on, and supports the implementation of GFEMS funded projects. His previous experience includes project and syndication financing, green financing, corporate banking, social and economic issues, and working with vulnerable populations. We have Ms. Najma Yasmin with us today, currently serves as the Director of Research and Development at Bangladesh Institute of Labor Studies, BILS, the only labor institute of the country. There are 12 major national trade union federations associated with BILS. As the Director of BILS, Najma plays a vital role in enabling the workers' organizations be a major force by building the capacity of the trade unions through training, research, and information sharing. Mr. Mohammed Akhtaruzzaman is the Managing Director of Entrust Fashions Ltd and the Chairman of the Standing Committee on Compliance at BGMEA. He is also a former board member director of SEDEX. He is a widely recognized HR professional of the country with over 20 years of experience. Ms. Shaila Ashraf has worked in ready-made garment for more than 23 years with extensive experience in factory compliance and supplier issues. She is an expert in garment factory trade unions and well experienced in Bangladesh labor law and buyer's code of conduct. Since 2016, she has been the corporate HR head in Renaissance Group. She's also currently the president of the Institute of Compliance Professionals, ICP, and a part-time lecturer in HR communication. So today's discussion is focused on exploring solutions for the complex problems in today's garment industry. To help us better understand some of the issues, today's discussion will explore supply chain transparency, production planning, the impact of COVID-19, and how technology can help with these challenges. Among the panelists, first, I would like to go to Mr. Abdullahil Rakib, Director, BGMEA and Managing Director, Team Group. Mr. Rakib, as we know, ready-made garment export of Bangladesh dropped from 34 billion to below 29 billion in 1920 financial year. The situation started to recover again in 2021 when the export reached 31.5 billion. Bangladesh RMG sector is expecting a significant growth in 2021-2022 financial year after this recovering from this pandemic, but the recent report revealed that the RMG industries are facing crisis of skilled workers and there is a potential threat of new variant again. Can you please talk us through what the last 2 years have been for your members? What have been the biggest challenges and what the recovery looked like? If you can also give us some insights of the capacity utilization of your members and the steps for overcoming the recent challenges of the workers' scarcity and the preparedness for the similar situation if it happens like once the COVID attacked first. Mr. Rakib.
Thank you, Mr. Alim, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Thank you, Mr. Alim, to let me have the opportunity to speak on this platform. I believe every initiative have a common goal, and we all are here to understand how we can face the upcoming challenges of the decades versus what are the doables for each of us. Of course, like 2020 was a nightmare for everybody in the globe. It was a global challenge and we all faced this together. Sitting in Bangladesh, we felt very scared, particularly being an RMG owner, we felt more left out because a lot of customers canceled the orders with no commitments. So we felt alone and we didn't feel we have partners. We say we are strategic partners. We did not feel at that point of time, we felt like we are facing a doomsday, but fortunate that the resilient old factory owners, the challenges was at that point of time, how to save our workers in terms of paying them on time, because they are the one who are at the last bottom of the economic scale, even facing that if they do not have enough savings, they do not know what to eat. So each of the factory owners try to support. I believe government, I must say that thanks goes to our Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina. She came forward with a soft loan to give us to support 3 months at least. So by that time, fortunately, things have moved. We could follow strictly the WHO guidelines, and we could have the guts to reopen the factories, to reorganize, following all the safety rules, and we could manage the situation. 2021, we moved back, and you can see the last month was 4 billion, so which was like definitely came back. Of course, like when you see the challenges like the demand and supply, because of 2020 and 2021, the customers was kind of low in terms of maintaining their inventory, and they was holding back and giving all the pressure on us in terms of finance and others. So we had to kind of compromise. We definitely didn't earn anything in 2020 and 2021 because of all the uncertainty and paying back, because big paying back of the expenses. So 2021, we started coping up, but at the same time, we saw the supply chain uncertainty on the last phase of the year. So supply chain uncertainty, on the other hand, the demand grew from the customers, and also give us certain crisis. The port was a crisis, the container was a crisis, so everything, and the raw material prices started hiking. So we settle one challenge, we face another challenge, and then once we settle down, recently we see the Omicron is again coming up. So we are into a continuity of uncertainty, I believe. But thanks goes to each of the stakeholders that we are kind of understanding how to live with these challenges and how to cooperate with each other to handle the situation and get the things used to. Otherwise, we do not know when these things will be over. So I believe each of us are trying our best to continue, and with a hope to see at the end of the tunnel. I would say that when we see that opportunity-wise, crisis-wise, globally, there are changes because of COVID. People are believing in nearshoring. People are strategically thinking about moving out of China because of the situations, because of the geopolitical issues. So we have opportunities, we can actually capitalize the situation if we can work it out well. But then again, how do we handle our situation in terms of supply chain, in terms of the workers and workers' productivity? We talk about wage versus productivity analysis. We talk about how much you can afford at what stage. We have challenges in terms of mid-level management efficiency, not necessarily just the worker crisis, right? When we say the word crisis, is actually it's a wide angle. So the productivity does not only include worker crisis, it's also supply chain, it's also mid-level management. We talk about, say, we was in COP26 with BGMEA leaders, and we was showcasing our green revolution of the factories. We was committing, we even undertake, as a member of UNFCCC, we was committing to work to reduce 30% of the carbon emission. So we have challenges of pollution, but at the same time, we also need to grow. Now, these things are kind of like we have, in one sense, we say we want to grow, we want to explore the economy, we want to capitalize the situation whereby we can handhold with global partners. How do we can capitalize the situation which is coming from China? Then again, we have also need to understand how do we handle the situation and talk about rescaling and upscaling our workers, and to understand how the mid-level can handhold to digitize and get the proper report to make it more efficient. Some of the speakers before was talking about having a proper calculator. I believe those are the journey we have to go through. Moazem Bhai is here. Moazem Bhai will also talk about what we need to do, I know. But we have to speak up properly so that we are partners. We are not.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Rakib. I just have a quick question. So if you can answer like in 30 seconds or 1 minute, that to overcome all these challenges you were talking about, actually, can you share with us a few things? If there is any specific initiative BGMEA has taken, and including government, if any, you can share with us.
You talk about facing the
all the challenges like this right now, this worker scarcity, like skill, you said this salary versus the productivity, all these are challenges for you as factory owners. So what steps we have taken from BGMEA and government, if any, if you have it?
Well, to settle every demand and supply will have a situation. So this is a situation, and we are trying to deal. Each of the factory have their own training centers, and we are upscaling our in-house operators. So I believe that's a in-house within the capacity building, to recognize the good workers, to encourage them to produce more, to introduce PIBs. So this is how individually we are trying to settle. We have SAFE, which is a project by financed by ADB, government, and BGMEA and BGMEA. We have our 18 training centers and 82 training centers supported by BGMEA, funded by SAFE and ADB. So we are kind of engaging all those centers to upscale and train the entry-level workers. We took an initiative of innovation centers in BGMEA platform, which will start in February. We are trying to understand what are the upcoming challenges in terms of digitization, in terms of sustainability, in terms of understanding the mid-level management gap. How do we face the fourth industrial revolution? How do we adapt? How do we upskill our workers towards facing all those challenges?
Thanks a lot, Mr. Rakib, for your valuable and informative speech here. And this time, I would like to move to Dr. Khandaka Gholam Moazem. Dr. Moazem is the research director in CPD and the most renowned researcher in the country, as you all know. Mr. Moazem, could you please talk us about the impact of COVID-19 on apparel workers Bangladesh? How have their lives been impacted and changed? What are the some of the macro level trends you have seen due to this COVID-19?
Thank you, Mr. Alim, and I would like to thank SAI for inviting me to this very important new initiative. I'm sure through this initiative, more and more transparency in the capacity utilization process could be ensured. So definitely, it's an important initiative in this process. In fact, for the workers' point of view, the journey is rather much more severe, and it has ups and downs over this period. Very ironically, while in the early phase of pandemic, when factories were closed, that time workers also retrenched or laid off. From that end, we are now actually in other end, where factories are actually looking for more skilled workers. What a positive way of changes happen in the sector. Definitely, we may discuss it a little bit later, but we may start it from the period where workers have actually passed a very harsh life. In fact, in our study, we observed that around 14% workers, at least temporarily or permanently, were retrenched during the month of April or May during that time, which is in number is 350,000. But what is more positive in this context is that a good number of these workers have been returned back when the factories have started enhanced its capacity utilization in the following months. We have noticed that the capacity
Lynn, it looks like maybe Dr. Mosen's having some connectivity issues. So perhaps we will move on to the next. Oh, we've got him back.
He came back.
Sorry.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you continue, please.
Okay, so during the month of April 2020 or May, the capacity utilization rate was down to 6 to 7%. And from there, it has increased to 90% in December 2020. So lack of capacity utilization forced factories to adjust workers to laid off or retrench that. But unfortunately, what happened during that time is that not all workers who have retrenched didn't have received their due benefits. And this was also noticed in our studies as well. But what is more positive is that factories were eager to recruit their workers while their capacity utilization has started to increase. So a good number of factories, while we did our survey in October, we see that 53% factories have already recruited a good part of their workers who they have lost during the earlier months. So that is a positive aspects of it. But what is important here is that, and there is a responsibility in the from the buyer's end as well, is that a good number of workers didn't actually receive their dues, and which are still dues there. So we couldn't actually get a good solution there. But what government has provided as a stimulus package, that has a tremendous positive contribution for the factories to operate and to recruit their workers and thereby continue the job. I think continuation of the factories is a major positive image that Bangladeshi factory owners created among the buyers. So while the factories in Vietnam has closed, China has closed, partly India has also been closed, but in Bangladesh it was rather opened during this time. Though there are challenges, but they have opened it up, and thereby they could recruit, and thereby they could provide their workers wages, salaries, and thereby continue their businesses. So that has given a positive reward, I would say, in this process. But the thing is that a part of the workers who have who lost their jobs, we also surveyed them, particularly the female workers. While they were unemployed, they have a very serious period of crisis during that time, and overall they have reduced their consumption. They have sold their assets during that time, and female workers couldn't have the access to different government supports. So that while the male has an access to go to different areas, locations to find out some support, but female workers couldn't have that access and information. So they were rather in a very distressed situation. So that is, I would say, a very difficult part that has passed by the workers during the early phase of pandemic. But thanks from there is that we have returned back. But a challenge, I would say, from the macro point of view is that our social safety net programs or the social support programs are not so strong, and you know it. And the social safety net programs and the social protection, which is operating in Bangladesh, targeted mainly to the destitute women who have various kinds of financial difficulty, aged people, liberation war people. So, but for the workers, for their unemployment benefit and other kinds of things, those kinds of social safety net or the social insurance, we haven't yet actually couldn't actually yet introduce here. Thanks to European Union that they have come forward with a good amount of fund, but unfortunately that also couldn't be utilized because of lack of cooperation from the employers due to have their own way of reasoning the problem. But I would say they use that fund now, are being provided various kinds of support to the workers. But what lesson we have got from this initiative is that we need a unemployment insurance schemes here, so that workers, while they are unemployed, at least partially could get a support for a sizable period of time. So we have to consider that.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Muazzam. I would like to come back to you at the end, maybe the one you were talking about, to know about the way go forward. So I would like to move to Mr. Nasir Chaudhry, Country Manager, Global Fund to End Modern Slavery in Bangladesh. So, Mr. Nasir, how has the RMG sector in Bangladesh have been navigating challenges posed by pandemic? Any important lessons to share from your side? So I will also would like to know from you about this production capacity as we talk and the production planning. It is always important to look at the role that subcontractors play in helping tier 1 suppliers to navigate their fluctuating capacity. So, however, they're playing important role, but vulnerable as well, in particular when we talk about the working conditions. So, can you please share your thoughts on the importance of responsible subcontracting and its impact on the workers as well in your speech? Please, Mr. Nasir.
Thanks, Mr. Ali. Thanks, SAI, for giving me this opportunity. Can you hear me?
Yes, please continue.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. First, I would like to answer your first questions. Yes, the struggle and resilience of Bangladesh apparel sector during the pandemic is a wonderful example of how collective efforts, policy supports, and enabling environment can help a sector navigate a difficult situation like global crisis. Definitely, there are some caveats and controversy regarding some of the initiatives. However, overall, I think it's a success story so far. As Mr. Abdullah and Dr. Muazzam have rightly pointed out, the apparel sector in Bangladesh went through a very difficult time in 2020. Many factories, mainly smaller ones, got closed. More than 300,000 workers lost their jobs. Member of BGMEA, knitwear manufacturers, lost probably more than $3 billion, and member of BGMEA, garments manufacturers, lost more than 900 million probably. But the sector slowly but surely improved the situation in 2021 and started 2022 with very positive signs. So many factors contributed to this improvement. Let's start with the government's initiatives. The Bangladesh government approved $13 billion stimulus package for the manufacturers. However, it didn't reach out to the factories at the bottom, unfortunately. Provided cash transfer to workers of the struggling factories, while the factories were allowed to pay the workers in smaller installments. Bangladesh Bank, the central bank, directed the commercial banks to reschedule and restructure the loans and facilities as per the needs of the business. Besides, the central bank extended the export
Nasir, we're having difficulty hearing you.
We are hearing, but very low voice we can hear.
Oh, sorry for that. Let me check the sound. Can you hear me now?
Please continue. Fine.
I was talking about the initiatives of the governments and their agencies. So the central bank also extended the export incentive from 120 days to 150 days for the exporters. On the other hand, if we look at the initiatives by the manufacturers, they took some strategic and adaptive management initiatives. For example, they stopped doing their usual practice of around 30% advance needing, took pragmatic decision in advance ordering of raw materials, kept continuous communications with existing buyers, compromised in some cases in pricing with the struggling buyers, and negotiated with new buyers based on secure payment terms. As we all know, because of the pandemic, LC doesn't necessarily guarantee or secure any payment. So after the government and the manufacturers' initiatives, the third factor, which is the enabling environment, emergence of online or digital platforms during the pandemic helped the manufacturers. We saw the introduction of Serai, Martin Bay, Kapor, and a few other platforms which have been quite helpful. So I believe this FairCapacity platform of SAI will also be a good enabler for the sector. So during the strict lockdown, apparel factories remained open under strict health and safety guidelines. Some factories provided risk allowance, safe transportations, testing and vaccination services, and paid leave for infected workers. So these three factors, government initiatives, strategies of the business, and enabling environment help the sector navigate such a challenging time. And ILO, non-government organizations, they play the role of a catalyst. So, and going back to your second part of the questions regarding the subcontracting.
If you can do it a little shorter, so we are running out of time. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, subcontractors play an important role in the apparel sector. However, they are the most vulnerable in the entire apparel supply chain. Regardless of their nature of subcontracting, whether horizontal or vertical, specialized or component or product subcontractor, they are a key player in this sector due to various reasons, including, as mentioned by some of the speakers earlier, buyer-induced factors like shorter lead time, last-minute change, supply-related factors like lack of capacity, poor production planning, lack of raw materials, and other macro and micro-level factors like lower price, fast fashion, political unrest, etc. So though their existence is a reality and often critical, I believe these smaller factories, mainly in informal setup, do not have the desired working conditions due to a lack of resources, capacities, awareness, and lack of independent oversight and government monitoring. We GFEMS recently commissioned a study which revealed that workers in some such factories work under a verbal agreement, take different forms of wages, piece-based, weekly or monthly, work long hours without benefits, and sometimes live in the factory premises in unhealthy and unsafe conditions. But for all of us, consumers, buyers, suppliers, subcontractors, workers, it is important to improve the conditions because that's how we all will be benefited. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Ali.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your valuable thoughts. Now I would like to request Tiffany Roses, Senior Manager, Social Compliance, Fair Labor Association, FLA. Just I would like to ask you to talk about these suppliers, as SI has been working with the suppliers to help them measure production capacity and better understand all the components that can affect calculations. We have found that suppliers sometimes do not include all the things that can impact their production abilities. Can you share your experience with production indicators and the importance of including all variables in capacity calculations?
Thank you, Aleem, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar on the SAI's FairCapacity platform. It's really exciting to join this initiative and speak to the importance of responsible production practices and planning, and how the FairCapacity platform is an innovative approach to really get to the transparency of what is needed to uphold responsible purchasing and production practices. Aleem, you asked a really good question around the indicators that suppliers use to understand their production volume and capacity and what they can take on for orders. And in our work at the Fair Labor Association on upholding responsible purchasing and production practices, and working with our members to implement practices that can uphold our standards, we have found that the range of indicators on measuring production capacity for suppliers, but then how buyers understand those indicators can range, and often is the indicators are very limited. They're focused on the average standard minutes that takes to produce the garment and their lines, and that's about it, and the number of workers that they have. And what is exciting about FairCapacity is that it's looking at a range of indicators, things that generally happen in real life when it comes to getting an order out the door for a factory, such as things like worker unrest, absenteeism, power outages, and machine breakdowns. And these things are going to happen regularly at a factory. It's just the way that the business works. And what's important is that there's transparency around how often that's happening and how that impacts the buyer's orders and what's going to happen to the delivery date. And what we have found is that when there is that lack of transparency between the buyer and the supplier in booking capacity and then also placing orders, is that there's a range of impacts that can happen. A lot have been talked about already as far as excessive overtime goes, but also retrenchment can happen as well if there's a lack of orders coming under capacity of what the supplier expects. And so it's really important that that transparency is there, that there's a strong relationship between the buyer and supplier, but then also there needs to be an understanding of how these orders can impact workers, especially when workers really want to be able to predict and expect how much they're going to be working that day, mostly because it is important for their wages and what they're going to be taking home at the end of the day to afford their living, feed their families, etc. And so it's really important that that transparency is there, and exciting that FairCapacity is offering a way to put all these indicators together and come to a more accurate way to predict production capacity within the factory.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Tiffany. So we are a bit running out of time. I would like to request our next speakers can sum up, if we can sum up like in 2 to 3 minutes. So I would like to request now Ms. Shaila Ashraf, President, Institute of Compliance Professionals and Corporate HR Head of Renaissance Group. I have a question to you is, as an HR professional, how do you see the impacts of absenteeism and employee turnover in productivity?
Thank you very much. That's the question, right?
Yes.
Yes.
If you
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, SI, for giving me the chances to be here. Impacts, yes, you asked me to short it. Impact is very, very bad because it impacts on the direct business. Because if one operator absent or he or she is not in the line, so there might be a hamper of the production, and the production will be hampered, and at the end of the day, late shipment. This is the very important thing. So if the supervisor doesn't know that tomorrow my important process operator may not come, so he might be in the problem, and then he needs to find out the operator where I can get this important process operator, or the operator must be in the line. He or she is absent. Then this is the very bad impact, and this is we try to make them understand our workers that if you absent one day, how much cost effect on the production. I mean, how much dollar loss, how much euro losses in the factory. And if we don't lose this amount, then we can add something to your salary or something to your benefits, or something. We can give award to you. So it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. Few factories works and few factories didn't work on it. So the process is still going on. We try to make them understand why do you have said reason and everything. So we need to build system of the factory that sometimes leave process is not that good. So this is the reason the system may not be good, that they can take the leave and they can free to take for leave. So systems need to be implemented very strongly and monitored. And this need to be monitored very, very strongly. So this is the impact. And the next question was how do we use the impact? There should be a skill matrix chart data in the factory. Whose operator is, where is the skill matrix? So if there is including the capacity planning, skill matrix data must be there. So that if any operator is absent today, anybody is absent, but everybody should know, if there is a skill matrix, they should know that the same capacity worker, where is he today? Is there any same capacity of worker is in the factory today is now? Then he can go to that line and have a talk with that, and a management then can manage the line anyway. So because the line cannot be vacant. So that total production will be hampered. Total production will be hampered. So we need to be implemented.
You are talking about a little bit of technology in the sense, I think.
Yes, absolutely. So also I had a dream that digitalized the ES system, our workers' capacity system, digitalized. We need to be digitalized so that easily everybody can see what is the capacity of my worker. And if there is a lacking of,
we can come back with the solutions. I think potential solutions, and this initiative is one of the initiatives that can help us better. So thanks a lot for your practical thoughts from the field. So I would like to move on to Nazma Yasmin, Research Director, Bangladesh Institute of Labor Studies, who is working directly with the trade unions, means directly working with the workers. So, Ms. Nazma, I just would like to request you to talk in the line that in the past few years, the number of female workers in RMG sector is falling. Can you please talk us through some of the possible reasons behind this fall of the female workers? As we used to say, this majority means like 70–80% workers are female in Bangladeshi RMG sector, but unexpectedly it is going down for last few years. Ms. Nazma, please.
Thank you, Brother Alim, moderator. And I'm also thank you, Social Accountability International, to organize this wonderful event and giving me chance on this occasion. First of all, I agree that the number of female workers in our RMG sector is declining. Recently, we have found that the niche products is increasing, in which area the ratio of female workers are less than the male workers. During last few years, the demand of women products was high, and a huge number of female workers were engaged with this area, but the sector did not expand as expected. This could be one of the area for which the number of female workers are declining. Another important area is automation. Now, one worker can manage 4 machines, and this also require more educated and skilled workforce. This has become a challenge for the women coming from the rural areas. Another thing is before everybody can recall that for one machine operator, one helper was worked for one machine. But nowadays it is also reduced. One helper support more operators. This also another reason. And our experience from the field suggested that COVID-19 has compelled the workers to work under increased load. Now, meeting production target has become more important than working hour, overtime, or even job security. Besides, the problem of proper daycare center for the children of workers are still existent. So the female workers switch their job after baby born. The cost of housing is continuously increasing in the industrial area, in the factory areas. Apart from this, daily living expenditure increasing at all levels. And also challenge for the education of the workers' children. With this limited earnings, savings for future is merely dream. Therefore, the working women are sharing their bitter experience with experiencing women workers from their families, neighborhoods, and villages. This cause also contributing for the decreasing of women workers in RMZ. The points I discussed could be contributing factors for declining female workers in RMZ sector, and violence against women also could be one of the contributing factors for this.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your thoughts from the workers' point of view. That is very important for us. So a lot of questions are coming from the audiences. So we will go there. Just I would like to share with all the audience that the platform demonstration will be very soon. Just like after our last speaker from this panel, we will move to the platform demonstration. So definitely I will want you to be there so that we can actually demonstrate how the platform will work. So I would like to move on to last but not the least, our Mr. Mohammed Akhtaruzzaman, the Managing Director of Entrust Fashions Ltd. And recently, last week, he became the chairman of the Standing Committee on Compliance at BGMEA. So we got the right person today here to talk about. So Mr. Akhtar, yeah, I'd like you to talk on one important aspect, that is recent export data, and different reports are telling that a lot of orders, means in third quarter 2021 and first quarter 2022, a lot of orders are receiving and a lot of queries are in pipeline for Bangladesh RMZ sector. So as we are facing a lot of challenges already, so we already have extra pressure. Now, how will you actually manage this extra pressure on the capacity? How does the brand's purchasing practice impacts on this volume and your capacity utilization? Please, Mr. Akhtar. If you can finish like in 3 to 4 minutes, then that will be great for us. We are running out of time a bit.
Thank you, Alim Bhai, and also thanks to SAI for inviting me in this event. Yes, of course, last quarter and today also, we have received excessive orders than past 2 years due to pandemic. To execute these orders, factories have taken different strategies as per their understanding and capacity. In my case, actually, I did not receive excessive orders beyond my capacity. Though this time the order I have received is far more than previous any time. But last 2 years, I had to operate my factory with 50 to 60% capacity due to order scarcity. Now I have booked orders as per my full capacity and also have taken some additional management strategies to execute these orders. For example, we mainly focused on proper and effective planning to minimize supply chain gap. we tried to motivate our workers some different way, like worker skill evaluation by IE and HR department on daily basis, and based on their recommendation, we are reviewing workers' salary regularly. It is now regular basis beyond their yearly increment. And also we are conducting regular awareness program and counseling the workers to boost up their more mental ability. And also we have recently conducted a day-long cultural event with the active participation of our workers to refresh their mind while they were involved in different types of activities. I think every factory is working like this way to performing their orders. And so though overtime work is increasing compared to last 2 years because of much higher order flow at present, some factories may be unable to manage their order, not only for the excessive order they have taken, but also for worker scarcity, as Mr. Rakib Bhai also explained very well in his speech. Due to the worker crisis, and many of them are now forced to choose subcontracting factories to accomplish their orders. But I can say all the subcontracting factories are not non-compliant. Some of the definitely compliance factory with all the licenses and certificates, but they were unable to operate their factories due to COVID. But they have compliance, they have bond license, etc. Now they're these type of factories working subcontracting through taking interbond mechanism through BGMEA. But still, I can say yes, some deviation also is going on. Brands, in this case, in this particular issue, I can say brands should play ethical role when they are putting orders to the suppliers. To ensure sustainability in all the aspects, all the stakeholders should play the role from their end to get the ultimate result. And the brand to ensure sustainability in all the aspects, all the stakeholders, and they play their actually the effective role and realistic role. The customer also should come up with an efficient planning of their product sourcing. So their order flow must be even throughout the year, not the season based. It is my understanding. And they do not want to share extra cost for warehousing goods for when they push to hold our complete garments for even 3-4 months. So this type of practice actually hampering our maintaining production planning. Sometimes also they're issuing LC lately. Even they are sometimes issuing their LCs before shipment, just 15 to 20 days or 30 days before shipment.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Akhtar. Actually, it would be great to get one from the brand, because there is no brand, so there is no one to answer all these questions. So thanks a lot for all of your thoughts and the practices you are doing to tackle this extra pressure. And I think it is very meaningful that maybe today's subject matter, this capacity calculator, can help actually the factories for the effective planning you talked about. So I would like to summarize like today's discussion. We started from Mr. Abdullah Al Rakib and we ended with Mr. Akhtar Zaman. Both are the factory owner and also very active in BGMEA. And in the middle, we talked several stakeholders. So what we found is actually when there is a time come like COVID, so workers like they lost their job. Again, when overbooking of the production of the orders, then we have scarcity of the workers, and we have a huge scarcity of skilled worker again. And we talked about many of the speakers, since the opening speakers, that we are not actually calculating all these like factors of the capacity. So all these challenges we have, maybe in front we have like again another variant of the viruses. Maybe we don't know which way we are walking through. So also we talked about the living wages, like the workers, like Nazma said about their not really comfortable with the amount they're earning, rather they can go home and can earn less even. So altogether, it's a challenging situation. We have opportunities, we have threats as well. So I would like to go back to Mr. Dr. Moazem. So if you can show us, show us the path for the future in like maximum 2 to 3 minutes, if you can give us a thought how we can proceed further for future with a smooth way.
In fact, we all know that the world economy is now struggling to recover. And under such a situation, when our ready-made garment sector is getting an excess orders, so that is definitely provide them a much more cushion space to think of the future strategy for more of sustainable sector development. I think sectors should, I think, consider 2-3 issues. Considering the LDC graduation, which will happen within next 4 years. And most important part here would be, I think, 2 things. One is to enhance the productivity, and what you are actually doing, and you will do this capacity calculation, fair capacity calculation, other things definitely that will improve the productivity that is definitely needed. But at the same time, it is also important to consider to comply with the human and the labor rights issues. I think for the European Union, if we are finally get the GSP plus market access, or even the simple GSP, I think labor rights and ILO related conventions we need to comply with. So in that point of view, I think factories need to get prepared. And our research, we found that in terms of the level of compliances, factories located in Naranganj and Chittagong are behind than factories located in Dhaka and Gazipur region. I think this is very important aspects, that how these backward areas, I would say, particularly the knit factories and the factories located in Chittagong, to improve their compliance practices, and what sorts of initiatives could be taken for those areas. I think association should take a much more broader initiative in that part. I think an association should also cooperate to ratify the minimum age convention of ILO. Association would also cooperate for anti-harassment ILO convention, because those will be very, very important conventions that Bangladesh need to ratify in order to get the market access in the European market, if they like to get a subsidized rate in the European market. So from that account, I think these 2 areas, one is enhancing productivity efficiency, and another is compliance with the labor and human rights issues. I think factories need to work with. We are sure that big factories are there, group of companies are good. We are not talking about those factories, and those factories are only 400 or 500, but we are actually talking about the rest. I think around 2,500 or 2,600 factories, where I think much more effort to be given. I think their association's role is there. Since Rakib Bhai is there, Mr. Akhirudjaman is here, definitely they have a role, and they should cooperate to improve the compliance standards in the factories in the coming days.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Dr. Khandagam Moazem. So thanks to all of the speakers for your interesting discussion and the thoughts. So now we will now transition to the demo of the platform. So I would like to handing over to Stephanie to moderate this demonstration session.
Thank you, Alim.
And Jack will be there.
Thank you, Alim, and thank you for all of our speakers for providing that great insight. So for this next session that you've all been waiting for, we'll be joined by Jag Gill of Vertru. So Vertru has been SAI's technology partner throughout this project, helping us design and develop the FairCapacity platform. Dag, handing it over to you to introduce yourself and walk us through the platform and its key features.
Great, thank you so much. And it's wonderful to see so many people here today on this call. And thank you so much to all the panelists for speaking so clearly and so deeply about some of the issues being faced by the garment sector. I'm going to begin sharing my screen. Great, if somebody could enable that, that's great. And at the same time, I'm going to set up the next few minutes just so that we can understand what we're going to be seeing in terms of the platform. So I'm going to take the audience through logging in as a supplier and as a buyer. This platform is very much like other platforms. You register onto the platform, the registration is approved, and then suppliers and buyers can access the platform. The goal of the platform is to link buyers and suppliers through technology, through innovation. We've heard about the new technologies, blockchain, AI, etc. So we're using these new technologies in this platform to help facilitate connectivity for suppliers to showcase their capabilities, to calculate production capacity with new and additional variables that we've been hearing about, using a sophisticated calculator, but it's very easy to use in a few easy steps. So I'll be showing that. And then enabling buyers to search and discover suppliers, maybe new suppliers, maybe working with existing suppliers, and generate production order requests based on capacity and product capabilities. As discussed by the panel, we're looking to improve production capacity measurement and forecasting. And critically, what you're going to see in the platform is ways that we're also trying to incentivize good purchase practices. And that's why throughout the platform, you'll see alerts and notifications, especially to buyers, about potentially, the risks of placing large orders in short turnaround times, which we know can be problematic. And finally, just to add that the platform is very considerate about privacy and confidentiality. The key to the platform is that we want to create transparency about the use of subcontractors, but we don't need to disclose to buyers necessarily details about the subcontracting entities. We want to retain that level of confidentiality. So just to show you the platform as a supplier, your first step would be you would register onto the platform and you would be asked to complete this form and submit your details. We don't have to go through the details now, but that would be the first step. And then our team would approve the profile. And then as a supplier logging in, and we've just created a supplier account for the purposes of the demo, as a supplier logging in, you would be greeted with a few important pieces of functionality here. This essentially is a platform to communicate with buyers. And so you can see here, there are features such as the ability to be able to see your available capacity in a clear calendarized way, for example, and we'll come back to that. You can see some notifications here about buyers that have been communicating with you about particular orders, in this case, woven bottoms by a particular date and time when the production would be required. But let's jump straight to the very important piece of this platform, which is the production capacity. But before I get there, one of the important facets of the platform is, of course, as a supplier, you can add information, show your capabilities, and really show off your business and your skills and your performance. And so, for example, you're able to showcase the types of products that you can create. And we make it very straightforward. Lots of drop downs, for example, in order to add information about your capabilities. You can provide information about your workers, about the type of building that you operate in, even about the types of buyers that you would like to work with, whether you're looking to work with larger buyers in Europe, in the US, for example. And so the platform is there to really facilitate that. You're able to add audit information to the platform in case you would like buyers to be able to see your certifications, your standards, as well as the main operational processes as a supplier that you operate in. So this is all very straightforward to add as a supplier user. You can also add the certifications and standards that you're part of. In this case, you may be part of the SA 8000, you may be working with other standards across social compliance, environmental compliance, or other standards. And it's very easy just to add them here. And you can add them and then you can save the data, and this data is uploaded to the back end of the platform. If you are using and benefiting from SAI's social fingerprint program, for example, you can add the data here in a very easy way in order to attract buyers to your profile and showcase buyers your capabilities. And then you can add additional information regarding whether you have codes of conduct, etc., whether you work with any agents in the market. And so that's really in terms of setting up the supplier profile so that buyers can find you and locate your supplier profile in order to do business with you. Then moving on to the critical piece of this platform, I know that we've had lots of questions about the production capacity. So we've learned that basically that, this is a new calculator which is essentially drawing on additional inputs that have not been traditionally used in calculations. And we make it very easy for suppliers to add this information. So you can see here again, you're entering product information as a supplier and then various technical information that you have. You're also adding other information, machine breakdown rates, estimations of absentee rates. These are all factors and inputs that impact ultimately production capacity and can help visibility and it can help orders. And then finally, factors around average order size, for example. And then the system calculates this. On the back end, there is an algorithm, a sophisticated algorithm that makes it very easy. And then this data is saved. Now, critical to mention that we are leveraging new blockchain technology. And what this means is that this type of information is stored on the blockchain. It's stored safely, it's stored securely, and it can be verified. And we can also have an audit trail of this data, which is very important. But let's just see if we play around with some of these variables, for example, and let's see the calculator actually work. So let's say we're going to increase the machine breakdown rate to a little bit higher. And we submit, we calculate again, and we can see here automatically the monthly production capacity has fallen, as we might expect. And then we can save that, and then this data is saved. And know that this data can constantly be updated as the situation at the supply level changes. You can constantly update this situation. It is adaptive, it is dynamic. It's all stored. And so that's a really important piece of the platform, is the capacity calculator. Once you've entered capacity in the platform, then your profile is visible to buyers. Then buyers can go in and dynamically search for you and your capabilities. Also important to mention is that you as a supplier can add other organizations like subcontractors that you work with. In this case, it's very simple. It is a very simple invite that you can use, and you can invite your subcontractor onto the platform to add their information. We'll show you the subcontractor profile in a moment because that's important to show the privacy of the data, but also you can see here just other functionality. In this case, this supplier is already having a conversation with this brand or buyer, and they're looking that they've made some pending reservations based on capacity, and we can show you how that works in a moment. Let me just then show you in the case of a subcontractor. We can control and manage the data that is being shown at the subcontractor level. So let me now log in as a subcontractor, and I just want to show one particular piece here. So really important to show here is that at the subcontractor level and even at the supplier level, we can really control the settings of the data. And this is really to show that we understand that some of the information provided is sensitive, and we may not want to share all the information with buyers. And so we give the facility where a supplier user can essentially decide whether they want to show audit reports by simply clicking yes or no. They can upload them into the system, but the supplier has control about who sees this information. And we think that this is a critical part of the attractiveness of this platform. We know that suppliers are obviously concerned about information and its confidentiality. So I'm now going to shift, and I'm now going to, now that we've shown the supplier user experience and how a supplier can enter data, I'm going to show how a buyer can engage with the platform. In this case, we assume that the buyer has created an account, they've registered for the platform. And so the buyer experience is that a buyer has a unique dashboard where they have suppliers that they may already be engaging with. They have a map, they can show the exposure to different regions. In this case, this buyer is exposed to Bangladesh. The buyer too can also, add information and data about their needs, their requirements, for example. But critically, what the buyer can do is to do a search. They can search for suppliers that can meet available capacity parameters. So let's do a quick search. So let's assume I'm a buyer. I'm looking for woven bottoms. I'm looking for 1,000 units. And I'm going to put a future date of, let's say, April the 8th. That's a Friday. I can specify, as before, the different parameters. I may want suppliers that have the SAI social fingerprint score, for example. I may be looking for specific initiatives that this supplier is part of, for example. And in this case, let's do a search for suppliers in Bangladesh. So we can search on available capacity for this particular quantity. And the system is able to generate very quickly through the search engine, a list of suppliers that can meet this capacity. The capacity is available, and as a buyer, I can contact this supplier. As you can see here, a preloaded form, I can submit the request, and I can see as a buyer my other requests, for example. I can see that this request that we just made is pending. And then we can go back to the supplier search. And we can look at other suppliers, for example, that may meet our criteria. I can also click on the supplier profile, and I can get more information about this supplier. So this is essentially how your supplier information is presented to the buyer in this very neat interface, in this very neat dashboard. And as a buyer, I can be attracted to you as a supplier. I can see what customers you've worked with. I can see what standards you've had. So this is really the buyer view of the data that we've entered as a supplier. And so in that way, I can, I can contact you. I can say, I would like to get more information. And so this also becomes a communication tool. This becomes a tool to do business as well. And you can see here that the supplier, the message has been sent. Now let's do a search, for example, for perhaps a very large quantity. Let's do a much larger quantity. In this case, we can see the system dynamically working. Now, in this case, this is a very large quantity, and we can see that there are no suppliers currently able to meet that very large quantity order by this delivery time. But what we can do is we can actually open up the parameters, and we can say, okay, we're looking for suppliers that do have subcontracting relationships to broaden the available capacity. We're looking for suppliers that can basically do this order if they have partners that they can work with. And you can see here that we've actually seen here that the available capacity is not necessarily the capacity is not necessarily available, but if this supplier can work with particular subcontractors, then they can meet this order request. And I think this is a very new feature of this platform. We're essentially opening up the possibility for suppliers to create their own groups, their own subcontracting groups, in order to take on orders. They shouldn't be prohibited from taking on orders that might take them over capacity. They should be allowed to contact and communicate with the buyer, and also then enable them to invite subcontractors to the platform. So this is one of the unique features to the platform, which obviously together with SAI, we spoke to the market and we understood that this was an important need. And then just to, take you through other features of the platform, of course, we've seen the search, for example. The supplier has a dashboard. The buyer can look at any supplier profile and get information in real time about this supplier, their overall capacity, what types of products they make, where they're located, who they've worked with, the types of audit they have, for example. And so in order to facilitate the business. And that, Stephanie, is pretty much the demo. We went through it quickly, but you can see that there's a lot of capabilities and a lot of opportunities for buyers and suppliers to engage, and obviously for the industry to rise and to coordinate in a better way, and also obviously to calculate capacity in a much more efficient way.
Great. I think there was one feature, Jag, if we have time, it is, or maybe we could just speak to it, and it was about delegating the capacity to the subcontractors. Was that something you wanted to go over?
Absolutely. So, let's do another production search, for example. Let's make this a little bit larger. I'm looking for, again, another order of woven bottoms. I'm willing to work with suppliers that have extended capacity. And in this case, I can make a reservation request. So let's do that here. And I can submit that request. Okay, now I'm going to log out of this and I'm going to now log in as a supplier. And so now as a supplier, if I go to the reservation requests, I've actually clicked on another profile, but in this case, what would happen is that as a supplier, I would be able to go in and allocate this pending order. In fact, I should be able to do that. I can approve the order here, and here we go. So this is a facility where the supplier has approved this order from this buyer, and I can now begin allocating to my subcontractors. I can begin allocating the units that they're able to produce. So I think that obviously, we designed that to obviously add a lot of flexibility to the platform. Of course, this would total the complete order, but this facility enables the supplier to have a lot of control and management over the subcontractors and their orders. And I think that was the feature that you were referring to, right, Stephanie? Yeah.
That's right.
Great. So yeah, I think pretty much, that I think the key piece, the key innovation here is the production capacity as it's linked to the buyer experience. I think that's new. Nobody's really doing that in an efficient way or have researched such a, back-end calculation process. I think there are lots of platforms that connect buyers and sellers on pure product, but not on the available capacity. And I think that's the innovation of this solution. So I hand it back to you, Stephanie.
Great, thank you very much, Jag. And we're going to just rearrange a little bit the conclusion of today's webinar. I understand that some people have to leave earlier, so I'm just going to share some of the next steps, and then we will move into answering a few questions. But first of all, I just want to extend my sincere gratitude to all of our speakers. And I would also like to thank the SAI team for making this event happen. And a huge thank you to all of the participants who have joined us today. We had over 260 people attend today's webinar. So it's been fantastic to see all of your interest in the platform. So thank you very much for your time. In terms of next steps, we are going to be entering a pilot phase of the platform with free access to the FairCapacity platform for users. So this includes both buyers and suppliers. So I want to encourage any of you out there, any buyers and suppliers out there, to register your interest in the platform. And you can do that by signing up for the platform using the registration link that we are going to put on the screen. Registration just involves answering a few simple questions to begin with, and creating your login, and then SAI will be notified that you've expressed interest and that you've begun your registration process. And then what we'll do is we'll work with you to create your profile. So we have user manuals, we have trainings, really to help you fill out your profile, to calculate your production capacity. For suppliers, we'll guide you through the process of adding your subcontractors, because as Jag showed, that is a unique feature of the platform. And for buyers, we're going to help set up the platform so that you can do searches for suppliers in the ways that you would prefer. You're also able to schedule one-on-one demos with the SAI and Vertru team for you and your colleagues if you're interested. I also want to note that the launch of the platform today is actually part of a larger SAI project that includes free trainings and capacity building for buyers and suppliers on some of the challenges that were discussed earlier. So we have great training and technical assistance for how to improve production planning, for how to improve productivity in the workplace, how to improve in terms of labor performance or management systems, and responsible subcontracting. So as of February, we're going to be doing kind of public training courses on these topics. But participants of the pilot also get to request custom training that is going to help you meet some of your particular needs. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me via email. My email will be on the screen and will be part of the post-event package that we send you. So again, thank you so much for all of your time and your participation and your interest. We will now go to answering a couple of questions that have come in. I might answer the first few, and then we'll have some of our speakers answer some of the other questions. But to begin with, we had a question regarding who is going to be hosting the platform. Would it be SAI? Would it be local organizations? So to answer that, the platform is hosted by SAI and Vertru, but we've definitely identified the importance of linking our FairCapacity platform with other databases out there or other platforms. And so we have built into the platform API functionality. So the FairCapacity platform can actually be embedded within other software programs and platforms that companies or organizations have. So for example, we are talking to brands about how they could actually embed this platform in their existing sourcing platform. So we recognize that brands are not going to don't want to change the way that they currently do sourcing. They don't want a whole new platform. But if we can embed the features of FairCapacity into their existing sourcing platform, that would be incredibly beneficial to them. That was to answer that question. We also had another question about just the validity of data and concerns that a factory might have in terms of as we talk about transparency, suppliers don't necessarily want to be fully transparent, right? So they might not want to show that they've only got 60% capacity, because that could lead to, buyers trying to reduce the price if they see they're not fully at capacity. So this is a really good point. And so first, in terms of data validity, so at this stage, SAI is working one-on-one with the factories that are participating, that will participate in the pilot. to kind of help them measure and then validate all of the production capacity elements or indicators. And so we're providing assurance of the capacity at this stage, but we're also looking outside of SAI and looking to third-party databases, whether they be government databases or private databases, that could validate pieces of the production capacity calculator. So things like number of workers, even productivity levels, delays in raw materials. We can validate some of these indicators through third-party databases. So we are working to do that. And then in terms of like the transparency and the percentage of available capacity. So as you hopefully saw in that demo, we're not actually showing the actual percentage that you have available, because we definitely recognize that that is not something that suppliers want. So the buyer, when they do their search, they will only either see that you have capacity to do it, or you don't have capacity, or they'll see that you have capacity, if you bring on subcontractors. So we'll never disclose, that you've got 40% capacity in the month of May. And then importantly as well, we're not, as Jag shared, we're not restricting the ability of buyers to book orders at capacity, at facilities that are at capacity. We understand that that is the market right now, especially post-COVID. We do recognize that factories are operating beyond their capacity. But through this platform, we're hoping to just provide some transparency to that to begin with. And so notifying buyers that, this factory is going to operate beyond capacity. So you as a buyer need to work with that factory in terms of figuring out a solution to that. It could be a cost solution. It could be allowing subcontractors that were previously not allowed. And this platform really allows the buyer and suppliers to, to have that discussion. So that is, that's us answering a couple of questions.
Funny, there was a question to Mr. Abdullah Al Rakib. He left because of an urgency. I can reply the question about this stimulus package due to COVID-19. The answer is no, but not really denied to someone. Rather, there were some conditions. Those who actually met the conditions, they got the stimulus package. This is the answer of this question. And like this next question, we are working with a lot of like capacity building programs already Stephanie shared. And I think this is the answer of this question. So there is another question about many have said unauthorized subcontracting and overtime. So can anyone make us clear what can be the ways possible to meet up the buyer's demand if come up with last minute change? Yes, this is one of the most important things we are talking in this platform. And this is not at all possible if all the stakeholders are not responsible. So we are also talking about this responsible sourcing from the buyer. And this is where both the customer and producer will be in the same platform and both will be acting responsibly. So that can be a solution of this problem, as you said. So I think you are clear, and hope most of the questions we have answered already. I would like to ask Stephanie again for a last minute closing of the session today.
Thank you, Alim. And I do recognize that we have spent a lot of, today's discussion and even with the platform talking about how suppliers can, take steps to be more transparent and take better or make better calculations in terms of their production capacity. But we are doing a lot of work with buyers as well. So SAI has created a mutual buyer-supplier code of conduct that we are asking buyers to commit to when they participate in this platform. And by committing to this new code of conduct, they are, committing to decent purchasing practices and committing to making steps toward making purchasing practices even more fair. And so looking at things like, making last minute changes to orders, we are working with buyers to try to quantify the impact of some of their purchasing practices, because we've heard from buyers that unless they can really understand what the impact is, it's difficult for them internally to make wide-scale changes to their purchasing practices. So this platform is, participating in this project also involves buyers examining what their own responsibility is in terms of purchasing, and how their practices lead to severe consequences for the workers. So thank you for those questions. We do have a number of other questions that we're just not going to get time for, but we are committed to answering all of your questions. So we've got them all recorded, and as part of our post-event communication package that we will send to everyone, we'll be sending in FAQs, and we will be answering all of these questions. But with that, we will conclude the webinar. So again, I'm extremely grateful for your time, your participation, and your interest. I want to thank Alim so much for moderating today's session. Again, all of our speakers and everyone that has joined us, we're very grateful for your time. So thank you, and everyone in Bangladesh, have a wonderful evening, and elsewhere, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.